and see if I can share something as people come in. Share that screen. Try again. There it goes. Well, good morning and welcome. This is the July meeting of the third quarter meeting of our Wisconsin Tableau users group. For those who are not familiar with our group, we were an extension of the Madison and Milwaukee TUGs. Madison and Milwaukee TUGs have been established, Madison for just over a decade, Milwaukee almost as long, meeting in person. And our leadership there, Pat and Brandy, thought that there was a need for a broader Wisconsin group for those who didn't live in the Madison or Milwaukee metropolitan areas. And the Wisconsin Virtual TUG was created out of that pre-pandemic. So it was kind of interesting that we had a virtual TUG before the pandemic, which really helped as we went into the pandemic and doing things differently with our Madison Milwaukee TUGs. Got some exciting things that are going to be happening today. Well, first of all, I talk about the three TUGs as I mentioned. They work together and we coordinate our meetings so that we have one each quarter and don't overlap on topics any more than we need to. So if you see something interesting, something great, please feel free to join any of our TUGs. If you're here in person, that's great. Stop by in Madison, Milwaukee. We'd love to meet you. Today, we're going to have a welcome and an audience poll from our own Tammy Brown, which should be really fun and exciting, followed up by some great speakers. We've got Andy Collins from Salesforce, both Maddie Diericks and Felicia Steyer from Playfair Data. We're going to have a swag drawing and then go to our own Robert Salas, who's going to say, Tableau can't do that. He's going to talk about some newer techniques and different ways to work with data that's not available in Tableau. Probably seen things in the past about laddering, so we're going to have some really fun and exciting presentations. One of the questions that came to mind as we looked at the agenda is like, why are we having swag before the end? And you use swag to keep people here so you don't leave before it ends. And the real answer is that is Robert, just like Andy, Maddie, and Felicia, have such great presentations coming and such wonderful content that we don't need swag to keep you here. You're going to be here for the content. So on that note, let's move on to Tammy, and I'll stop sharing and Tammy can share, and you're all invited to join our poll.
Okay, here is the QR code, or if you'd rather just I'll add the link to it in the chat. If you'd rather click on a link, I'll give everybody a minute to get into that. And then we will start the poll. Okay, I will go ahead and start. Where are you attending from today? The Madison, Dane County area, Milwaukee County area, somewhere in Wisconsin, not in Wisconsin, or completely outside the United States? Looks like most everybody is from Madison or Milwaukee. Okay, cool. Next question. How is your summer going so far? It's going too fast. I have more things to do. Too slow. I'm waiting for winter. It's too dang hot, or the weather and the pace is just perfect. Like me, it's going way too fast for me as well. I have a lot more things that I want to do, and it seems to be, it's almost August already. Not ready for that. Okay, next question. How has post-pandemic life affected your work style? Did you make work from home permanent? You never worked from home and you still don't? You return to the office part-time, or you return to the office full-time? Looks like a lot of people split between returning, so hybrid and complete work from home. So I didn't think I was going to like working from home, but I was forced into it in March of 2020, and I made it permanent. I used to have a 40-minute commute in good traffic, which turned into almost an hour and a half almost every single day. So I don't mind not spending 3 days in my car anymore. Or 3 hours in my car anymore every day. Okay, how is the record-breaking heat where you live? It's non-existent. It's very pleasant where I live. It's pretty hot, but I can manage. I could draw a heat map in my backyard, or my office is a floaty in my pool. A little humor there. If you know me, you know my sense of humor. I try to be funny, and sometimes it falls flat, but it's pretty hot. Heat maps in backyards. Someone has a floaty in their pool. That's awesome. Those of you where it's non-existent, I hope that's because you're not having this heat wave that we're having in Wisconsin, because it's pretty bad right now. We have our local 4-H fair going on right now, and the animals just looked miserable last night when I was there, so I feel bad for them. Okay, which of these upcoming Tableau features are you most excited about? And these are features that were announced at TC23. So Sankey charts or native address geocoding, image roles, generative AI, Tableau public content discovery, or maybe you don't know what any of these things are, and that's fine too. They're all coming. They were all talked about at TC23. A lot of people don't know what any of these are. That's awesome. That gives us good content feedback for the future. Okay, moving right along. What is your level of expertise with dynamic date selection? Are you beginner, intermediate, expert, or you know that today is July 27th? Meaning you don't really know what dynamic date selection is. Awesome, awesome. People are going to be seeing dynamic date selection for the first time. So that's really cool. You'll be seeing that today. Perfect. Okay, next question. Which of these is not true about Tableau image roles, just to see what folks might know about it? Text strings can map to images. Images are managed internally. The images can be used in row and column headings. Workbooks with images can be exported and shared. Or what are Tableau image roles? Glad to see that we have a lot of people saying they don't even know what Tableau image roles are, so that's exciting. So I'll wait until almost all the answers are in, and then I'll give the spoiler. So the spoiler is images are managed internally is not true. They are actually managed externally, and we will get some information about that. So exciting. So true or false, Tableau can be used to launch other reporting platforms. Is this true or false, or I'm not sure, show me more? And we'll all wait with bated breath to find whether this is actually true or false. Robert is going to be showing us a little bit about that. But what do you think? Is it true or is it false? 8 people so far want to be shown more, so that's awesome. Okay, and last question, true or false? I can use Tableau to see where I have a lack of data. True, false, or I'm intrigued and you just want to see more? Cool. All right, we have some intrigue, Robert, for you at the end of the TUG today. So that is the end of the poll. So I will send it back to you, Rob.
Great. Thank you, Tammy. That was great. I'm going to turn it over to Andy now, who is going to talk about the Tableau roadmap and features and plans for the near future of Tableau. Hey, Andy, it looks like you're back. Great.
You hear? Yeah, I just had to go through testing audio and video. So hopefully this is where you see me.
We can see you, yes.
Yes, we can. We can.
So hopefully, I think this is the first time you're doing this on this platform, correct? The new platform.
Correct. And you can share your screen with a little icon at the bottom right next to start.
Yep, I'll go ahead and do that as well. So bear with me 1 second. And you should see it right here.
There it is.
Are we seeing it? Is it large enough? It looks like it's a little smaller on my screen, but does it work for you guys?
It's readable for me.
Okay.
So. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, great to be speaking with everybody here. Andy Collins with Salesforce by way of Tableau. Have been here a little over 2 years. Based in the Milwaukee area. Live down with my family in Bayview. So not too far from. I think we got 33 people on the call here, so everybody's familiar with Wisconsin, obviously, but the greater Milwaukee area. From Grafton, Cedarburg area, made it to Tableau by way of Gartner. Spent about 7 years there, helping with, helping CIOs, CTOs kind of think about people process technology, kind of broad brushstrokes of how IT impacts business and their organizations. But I've really been in the swim lane around data and analytics for the better half of 2 years, like I shared, and excited to be speaking with you today and sharing a little bit of some of the recap from Tableau Conference 2023, some of our roadmap that was announced there, and just some of my thoughts, kind of being within these four walls of Salesforce, what I'm hearing in terms of where we're investing, where we're going. Obviously, there's been a lot of change. I know that there's some users that have been using Tableau since we got started, but obviously a lot of change now, being integrated with Salesforce and kind of their company objectives and how they, partner with their customers. Just some different changes, some good, some bad, but just want to kind of share some of my thoughts there. So please do. I'm going to have the chat up, so if there are questions that come up, feel free to put them there. Would love to kind of interact, as we kind of go through and everything. So let me jump ahead here. And I know I got about 10 minutes and probably less now, but this is our standard slide. Just make sure you're making buying decisions and kind of as the golden truth. Things change in our business. A lot of things that are outside of my purview, but I'm going to share to the best of my ability, what I've heard, what's going on, and so forth. So always further validate and buy what's readily available in the market. So when you think about Tableau, obviously I kind of spoke to this a little bit. There's been a lot of evolution in our kind of history from, breaking up what traditional reporting was back in the early 2000s to help, organizations and analysts see their data in a different view. And then turning that really into self-service analytics. So how do you see and understand that data applied to different use cases across your business? Really, we're a leading force in that space. Per the Gartner Magic Quadrant, which I was very familiar with, but really kind of push that envelope forward in the BI space. And then we think about where we're at today. People being, I think we spoke about it a little bit earlier, is like people being remote, needing to access data, maybe when they're not on site, pulling in various other cloud application, other investments that you've made across your enterprise suite. How do you marry that data together, see, understand, and make decisions off of it? That's kind of a core principle that we've added to what we're doing, is how do we act? How do you start to embed action into these dashboards that we're creating to take action? So jumping ahead, I was able to attend Tableau conference. I think there's a handful of people. Feel free to comment if you were able to be there. It was really cool to see it come back. I know at its peak, 40, 50,000 people. We had I think close to 15,000, I think this year. It really filled up, and the energy was great. If you have a chance to go there, and in the following year, it's going to be in San Diego, is in Las Vegas this year. I would highly recommend it. But some things that were launched at the conference, we're at our 20-year mark, anniversary as a company. Have made a lot of different investments over that time period, launching different products. More recently, some of the data stories, augmented analytics, generative AI, things that we're starting to infuse into our product. But really, our chief customer officer, you can see right there, Francois. He's talking about how it's a new day for data. Connecting across different business functions, roles in an organization. How do you start doing more with the data that you have? As that continues to grow, the data keeps growing. And we talked about AI embedding, putting applications of Tableau into your customers. A challenge that I hear from a lot of my customers, and I specialize in manufacturing, distribution, and logistics. It's, they're trying to create new dialogue with their customers. So surfacing data to them that's curated, that's secure, certified, starts to create new dialogues. And maybe it's not necessarily, hey, where is my product in its shipping route? They have access to some of that information and can self-serve analytics themselves. That's somewhere where we're investing a lot of capability around. Salesforce Data Cloud, this is us dipping our toes into the warehousing infrastructure. We call it an active data lakehouse, but being able to maximize the data that you have in and out of Salesforce, doing real-time insights and analytics. And then there's a lot of announcements, devs on stage and such. So just some high-level findings. But really the thing that we're hearing most about is, I think everybody call and confirm, AI, how is it influencing what we're doing, not just today, but in the future? How is our business thinking about it? How are we using it in our personal lives? That's not new for Tableau. We've been doing this with Ask Data, Explain Data, data stories that came to Tableau, I think beginning of this year or late last. Einstein Discovery, where you start doing predictions on top of the data that's already in Tableau. These are things that Tableau has been doing, not just since ChatGPT came at us by storm. So some cool things there, and really, the purpose of when we're thinking about, or kind of our focus around generative AI and our strategy is, how do we further supercharge our analysts, like allow you to not have to maybe go and create and build and tweak and change things, but how do we make the dashboard smart for you? So we're utilizing some of that, giving you a trusted foundation. So a lot of the concerns that we're seeing about ChatGPT is we input these prompts. Where's that data stored? How is that being used in the open market? A foundational trust platform when we kind of think about generative AI, and we're one of the top enterprises doing it for it environment. But really, it gets down to empowering your business users to self-serve, engage with their data differently, ask questions, and then be offered up, insights in context. So that's ChatGPT. This was launched at the conference. We're bringing data to life with AI. So some of this is actually going into pilot this next month. So in August, September, we're piloting this with some different organizations. But I would see this being folded out to the greater Tableau audience, everyone on Tableau Cloud, probably in January, beginning of next year, is when we would roll this out more full-fledged. But this is, putting those insights in context for your users, personalized, contextualized, smart insights. GTP is the foundation of that. But as we kind of think about the product and how we're bringing our customers, it's what we're calling Tableau Pulse. So you can kind of think about this as Tableau metrics on steroids. This is just like those three different things that I outlined. It's infusing relevant data into your workflow. The engine is surfacing those key metrics based on the data and your role. What's going to be most important to you? Those are dynamic, and they can change based on what the data is telling us and the story behind it. So it's highlighting those top things. And it's basically you go in and you're going to have your guide to say, hey, these are the top things that I should be looking at today, and here's why. And then here are some of the follow-on questions that you should be asking of your data. So it's very curated. Like I said, pilot programs kicking off here in August and September, but not chat GPT for Salesforce is the underpinnings here. Get those personalized metrics. You're going to see these different headlines. You can kind of see on my screen here. You're looking at appliance sales over time. What is bolded and colored in green is telling you kind of exactly what you should be looking at. You're able to interact with it, drill down. You can see this contextualized. This is actually in a Slack workflow that this insight is being surfaced to the user, and they can comment, reply, tag, interact with that data and visualization on the collaboration platform. So this is integrated into already what they're doing, whether it be Slack, email, or the web. And then think about being smart. This is all automated. Like I said, there's these other questions that are highlighted. How does appliance sales compare to last month? Like you're asking, compared to this month, and so forth. So that's really where we're going when we kind of think about augmented analytics, generative AI, how that's being infused into the cloud platform under analytics for Salesforce. But I'll end here and kind of just show you the different components as we kind of think about Salesforce analytics, what that looks like, the different product sets that we have. And I'll pause there for questions. I haven't seen any in the Slack, but was there anything that anyone wanted to ask, I guess, right now, if you came off mute or put it in the Slack or the chat?
Well, thank you, Andy. Sounds like some really exciting things coming up. And for those who don't know, there are opportunities for all of us. Either join the Tableau beta program, which is free and gives you opportunity to see things ahead of time and do some testing, or go out in the community if you have questions, things that you're not able to do in Tableau, and bring them to our TUG. Go out to the Tableau community online and ask questions and find answers. And if there are things out there that a lot of people are interested in that are not current features, the leadership Tableau really looks at those and does follow up on those. So that's great. And thank you again, Andy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, to echo your comment right there, reach out to your account executive if you have that relationship, ask to be a part of the pilot, ask to get, in the know, because these things, like I said, it's very fluid in terms of how we're rolling it out. The pilots are starting here in August and September. There's going to be a lot of other opportunities to start to influence, where we're going and where we're investing. And we want to hear from our customers, the customers that are using it, because that shapes ultimately where we're going to go. And that's historically by nature how Tableau is operated. So we want your feedback, want your thoughts. Where should we be investing and committing our R&D around? So yeah, I appreciate the time and just the space to share. If anybody wants to connect, after the meeting or any other time, like I said, here in Milwaukee, feel free to reach out to me, message me on LinkedIn. Happy to always connect and have a conversation.
Great. Thank you. And
Yep.
then we'd like to introduce Felicia Styler from Playfair Data, who's going to talk to us about dynamic date selections. And this is something I get asked about frequently as I help other users and developers. And I'm really looking forward to seeing some better ways to do some of the things that a lot of us struggle with.
Rob, actually, I'll be doing the dynamic date selections for this one, so I can go ahead and share my screen. Is everybody able to see?
Looks good.
Yep, thank you. We see it.
Thank you. So yes, my name is Maddie Durkis. For those of you who don't know, I am a manager of decision science at Playfair Data. And just a little bit of background about me. I've been working in Tableau for about 2 years now, and that sort of began with Playfair when I started here. I've also had the opportunity to write a lot of blogs for Playfair, and one of those blogs I'll be presenting on that topic today, which is dynamic date selection. So just a little bit of background is kind of what is the goal of dynamic dates. The two biggest things were ease of use, meaning that users can quickly move between common timeframes, and then they're also able to create a standard of comparable timeframes. So especially for, executive level dashboards, when you're focused on, what are my big picture numbers, what are my top KPIs, and how do they perform to, the prior month, quarter, year, so on and so forth. Clicking through a lot of different date parameters and date filters can get a little bit, monotonous for the end user. And we also want to make sure, they're comparing apples to apples. So not, an apple to a half an apple, 1 month to half a month, just sort of creating that sort of standard of comparison. The other reason is efficiency. Complicated data equations can take away from workbook performance, and they also can be a little bit difficult to QA and create a lot of room for errors. And just a little bit of the inspiration kind of behind why I kind of came up with this way to do it was I had gotten a workbook and was looking through it and ran into this. It took me probably an hour or so to really even understand what was going on. But essentially what this equation is doing is it's going to look at, the current month, week, or year, or the previous one anchored on today's date. And then also it's trying to get a comparison range to either look at the previous period, meaning if we're looking at July is today, do we either want to look at June data to compare it to, or do we want to look at July for the previous year? And then it also had an option to select custom date ranges, which I won't be doing in this presentation, but that's easy as adding in another sort of parameter option to flip between date parameters you can set. So I'm just gonna jump into a demo. So let me escape here. Can everybody see the Tableau now?
Yep.
Yes.
Awesome. So the first step to do this is I'm going to create 3 different parameters. The first one is called, I called it the period parameter. It's an integer value. And then the options will be 0 and -1. And I'm displaying them as this and last. And essentially what this is going to be doing is that's going to be saying, do I want to look at this week, month, year, or do I want to look at the previous one? So kind of saying, today is July 27th. Do I want to look at this month, which would be July 1st through the 31st, or do I want to look at June 1st to the 31st to kind of set that base date that we want to look at? The next one is going to be the date part selection parameter. This one is a string as the data type. It's also a list. And for this example, I plugged in week, month, quarter, and year. You can add in day if you want, but it's also important to note that we're using these in date equations. So the value must be lowercase. So I just put my display as an uppercase just for, UI UX, but the value itself needs to be lowercase. And then the last parameter I'm creating is the comparison. So based on, the month we have, as our kind of base month, this comparison parameter is an integer list, and the values I have are -1 and 1, meaning that do I want to look at just the immediate prior period? So kind of how I explained, if I'm looking at July, do I want to compare it to June? Or year over year, meaning if I'm looking at July 2023, do I want to look at July 2022? I can't see the chat, so are there any questions so far? I can pull it up.
I thought I would just ask the question for everybody else's edification. Why does the value need to be lowercase? Week, month, etc.
So when you're using date formulas, this is representing the date part, and it just accepts it as a lowercase value. So just kind of just some of the nuance of it. So the next equation that we're going to create is our start date of our kind of current date range or time frame that we want to look at. And so what this equation is doing, I don't know if I can make it a little bit bigger for everybody to see. We're using the date add function to look at the date part selection, which is going to indicate, do we want to look at a week, a month, quarter, a year? And then it's going to either, based on our period parameter selection, look at either this month, week, quarter, a year, or look at the previous one. And then based off of today's date, using this date trunk function, that's going to take today's date and then bring it to the first day of the date part. So if today is July 27th, it's going to, if we have month selected, it's going to create a date that is July 1st. If we had week, it would do July 23rd, and so on and so forth. The next is the end date, which is just a date add function, and it's going to take that date part selection parameter. So again, the week, month, quarter, year, and then add one date part to the start date. So I can go ahead and drag these into the text box so we can just take a look at it. I'm going to do month to year. So right now I have it set to last year. So it's looking at January 1st, 2022 and January 1st, 2023 as the end date. So if I were to change it to this year, it would be moves to January 1st, 2023 and 2024. I can look at this month and easily change those start dates. And then the next step, if you wanted to, would be creating a date range, looking at, in this case, I'm using order date. Is the order date greater than or equal to the start date? And is the order date less than the end date? And the reason I'm doing less than for the end date is, as you can see, this is populating August 1st, 2023, and we want that last date to be the last date of July. Next, we're going to start working on our comparison dates. And before I can actually create the start and end date, I need to do this equation, which is, I'm calling that the comparison date part multiplier, which this one is saying if the comparison parameter that we selected is equal to 1, which I have as year over year, then look at the date part selection parameter and say, if it's week, I want to go back 52 weeks. If it's month, I want to go back 12 months, quarter, 4, and 1. And, you know, this is just, there are 52 weeks in a year. So to go back a whole year, we need to go back 52 weeks. If it doesn't equal that, then just leave it as a 1. And you'll see why in the next equation, we want to leave this as a 1.
Maddie, could you continue to make the text a little larger as you display the?
Yes.
That's great. That really helps. Thanks.
Yeah, of course. Sorry about that. And then, so next we want to create our start date comparison. Let me make this big. So similar to kind of what we did for just the start dates, we're going to be using a date add function. And just, I know we're going backwards in time. Date add works for, you know, adding or subtracting values to a date. So same as before, the first section is our date part. So it's going to reference our date part selection parameter. And then the amount we want to go backwards is going to be the comparison parameter that we have selected. So either 1 for year over year or -1 for prior period, and then multiply it by the equation that we just created. So if this were to equal -1, it would just be -1 times 1 for prior period, which would just look back that one date part. And if we're doing year over year, this equals 1, the comparison parameter, and then we're going to multiply it by either, negative 52 for weeks, negative 12 for month to look back that many date parts from our start date. Next, we're going to do the end date comparison, which is the same exact one. So you're looking at the date part selection, how many units in time do we want to go back, and then, but we're doing it from the end date instead of the start date. And again, I can pull these onto text so we can get a little bit better view of how these are coming out. So yeah, so since we're looking at July 1st and August 1st, 2023 as, our current date range, and I have comparison selected over here in the parameters for year over year, it's now looking back for July 1st, 2022 and August 1st, 2022. So if I were to change this to prior period, it would be looking at the month of June. Next, you can just create your comparison date range, which would just be the same as the regular one, doing order date greater than or equal to the start date comparison, and then less than the end date comparison. And this is just, super helpful for building out those sort of quick comparisons. It's so easy to kind of jump between each one. If you want to just create, looking at your sales, type that in, and then you could look at, I created another calculated field called range assignment, which is essentially saying if, the current date range is true, label it as current. If comparison date range is true, label it as comparison. Drag that into columns. I'm going to exclude null. You can easily see some comparisons like that. Drag in this as a label and see what your sales were from the current in comparison. Another helpful thing to do, this is really useful for like bullet chart comparisons. If I were to create a calculation for current sales, simply looking if the current date range is true, sales, else 0. Pull that into columns. Let's look at it by subcategory, and then I can drag in this formula, which is comparison sales, saying if the comparison sales date range is true, sales, if not 0. Drag it on here, create dual axis, synchronize, and then create a bar chart and a Gantt bar. And if you're kind of to put those together, you could create a really simple dashboard like that, where an executive is able to look at, what was last month's sales in comparison to the month before or year over year. And you've just got, apples to apples comparisons, really easy for people to click around and explore those dates at, kind of the high level that they're wanting. I don't know if people will have access to the slide deck. I do have everything laid out. But that is it. I have links to my blog page, my email, as well as my LinkedIn if anybody's interested. Those are dynamic date ranges.
Well, thank you, Maddie. That was really great. One thing that I really appreciated is one of the things as you laid out your workbook, you used index numbers for each parameter and then each calculation to keep them in order. I know that's one thing that I've struggled with in the past. You create 5 different calculations that, number 2 depends on number 1, number 3 depends on number 1 and 2. But if you don't put those index numbers in front of them, a year later when you come back to it, it's really hard to work out what that relationship is without opening each one. So I think that's just a really great thing along with that. I don't see any questions in the chat, but we'll leave that open. And Maddie, if you wanted to post that presentation to the chat, that would be great.
Yes, I can do that.
And if you're able to share the workbook too, that would be great. And then our attendees can pick it up right from the chat. And thank you again.
Of course, I can.
And with that, we will go on to Felicia, who's going to be talking about image roles.
Thanks, Rob. All right, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, does it look good for everybody?
Yes, that does look good. Thank you.
Perfect. All right, I'm Felicia Steyer. I work for Playfair Data. I'm the Associate Director of Analytics Solutions. And if you're a Playfair subscriber, you might have seen my recent blog on 3 ways to optimize file size. I'm based out of our KC office, but I've also lived in St. Louis and Naples, Florida. And I actually spent a lot of time as a kid up in kind of the Chicago to Kenosha area. So spent a fair amount of summer vacation in Wisconsin. Outside of Tableau, I really enjoy board games and hiking. These are some recent pictures that I took on a nature walk in KC, which has been lovely moving back to the Midwest. So if you want to find me on social media, I use the handle Grapehopper. I'm on Twitter, Reddit, Tableau Public. So please feel free to reach out and follow me. I'm also doing a series called Tableau 365 where I try to answer 365 questions over 2023. So please feel free to tag me if you're asking questions in the Tableau subreddit or on Twitter. So what is image role? That's what we're here to talk about today. It's a great new way to display images. I don't know if any of you have ever had the delight of working with custom images for flags. You know, you've got like 150 country flags. You've assigned them all individually to the right country. And then your manager's like, actually, we need to add New Zealand. We missed New Zealand. They just weren't on the map. So you need to go and add that to your data set. And then when you upload that new flag and reload the custom shapes, they're all reassigned and you've got a bunch of circles and squares and you've got to reset every single flag. ImageRoll has the solution if you've ever been in that particularly niche nightmare. It behaves a little bit like custom shapes, but the process to deploy them is completely different. So like custom shapes, your images are going to be in the worksheets. So they're not dashboard objects. They're actually in your worksheets. And you can control them with filters, parameters, calculations, just like a dimension. Unlike custom shapes, they're going to appear on the outside of your sheet. So with custom shapes, they're going to appear inside the axes in the pane or cells of the view. Image role is going to be in your headers. It acts just like a header label would. The other thing is that, you're not going to need to update your repository in the workbook. These images actually live on the web. So there's no custom shapes file, preferences, any of that. It's all digital, man, 90s. It's all online. So what is the process for this? So first you've got to find your URLs. You know, if you don't have URLs, it won't work. You bring the URLs into your data set through some way. This could be through calculations or by joining to that list of URLs. And then finally, you apply image role to your URL dimension. This sounds like the hard part. It's really the easiest. And then finally, you put together your view. So time for the live demo. I'm going to pull up our Tableau workbook and show you our starting point. So this is a really similar starting point to the one I had before. Here I've got a list of states and I have their sales and profit in Superstore. So my goal here is to add state flags next to the names so that we can really quickly find that dark blue of the Wisconsin flag. that we aren't like, oh, where's Wisconsin? All right, there it is. Hopefully adding the flag is going to help us find it quicker. So next we need to go get our URLs. And what's nice is that Wikipedia has flags, easy to use, easy to grab. They're in the Wikimedia Commons. So these are fair to use. When you're choosing URLs, you want to make sure that these images are small, that they are open copyright. We don't want to steal anybody's images, and they cannot be password protected. So if it's something on your company share drive, Tableau can't enter the credentials or the single sign-on to get to it. So it has to be somewhere out there in the public. Sites like Flat Icon or the Noun Project or Wikimedia are all great places to grab images from. I'm going to scroll down and find Wisconsin. Here we go. And I'm going to right-click, open a new tab. If you click on Flag of Wisconsin, it's going to tell you about the history of it. We want the image itself. So I open this in the next tab, and then I have a lot of options here for different resolutions. I'm going to go with a small one because my table, the heights are pretty small. So when you're choosing an image, you want to try and match as close as you can the size to the final size. Otherwise, you might get some impacts on image quality. So I'm going to click on this one. It's pretty small. It's the closest version they have to my final product. I'm going to grab this URL. And now I'm going to throw this into a Excel, which is a simple spreadsheet. And then we're not going to do all 50. I've already gone through and grabbed all 50 for us. So this is what your data set is going to look like eventually. So you've got your joining key and your URL. Then I'm going to bring this into our workbook. So I'm going to edit my sample Superstore data set. And I've added state flags in as another data set. So I've got my second data connection here. Okay, there we go. I have a few different fields in it for the actual version, but I've got my state flags tab in the spreadsheet. I dragged it over and I'm joining state to state. So once this is up and running, I'm going to test that my join worked correctly. So I'm going to open a new tab, pull in state. Because the first time I did this, I messed this up and then I thought it was the image's fault, but it was my fault because I was trying to join on the state abbreviation. So I bring in state from both sources. I've got matches and my URLs are coming through. So this looks good. Our next step is to turn these URLs into an image role field. Now, if you've ever used geographic role, image role works very similarly. So I'm going to click on the data type here on the left. And then under geographic role, we have this new option of image role. And I'm going to select URL. And now all of those text fields have turned into flags. Finally, I'm going to go back to my flags and bring in the images. And we're looking pretty good. So that's our live demo. I'm going to go back to the slides now and go through some tips and tricks. Okay, so all of this is going to be available. There's two other use cases I want to talk about. These are both in the blog post that I wrote on this. We can also use this for product images. So let's say you've got the Superstore data set and you're like, I do not know what an ARCO clip is. What is an ACO clip? You can bring in those product images. And then another use case that is possible is to add a face to your data. So if we always want to personalize things, a lot of teams have avatars, like these are our Playfair avatars. So it's pretty easy to grab those if they're posted somewhere publicly, pull those in and upload them. Like this with Twitter avatars would be a great use case. Some limitations, your link has to be publicly accessible. Your image type is pretty limited. It used to be just PNGs and JPEGs, but in version 2023.2, we got GIFs and vector images. So that's really exciting. Our file size is limited to 200 kilobytes, which increased also in 23.2. When I was testing this in, I think, 2022.4, anything smaller than a business card worked. So 200, I don't know, maybe you're looking at like a Post-it size now. And then finally, okay, got a little lost. Okay, so finally, you're limited to the headers. It's always set to fit and center. So in our workbook, if I pull that back up, we can see that my first sheet where I brought them in, we've got a little bit of like different sizing going on. So here, the Illinois flag and the Idaho flag are like different widths. So it's really hard to control, especially if I start bringing in something like, I don't want anything too crazy, but if I do bring in like region, no, it's something with multiple per state. I bring in order date. So, and I've got, let's do month too. Like it's just going to be floating there in the middle. You can't really control it. And then like poor Maine only has a few of these. So it looks tiny compared to everything else. So if you're going to have differently sized rows, it's pretty limiting. So careful with your layouts. And then finally, there's an upper limit to how many images can be displayed at once. So if you start seeing images disappearing, that could be what's going on. I think they've updated this limit of 30 to 100, but it's limited in a few different ways. So I know 30 is going to work for you. Yeah, keep it to a Post-it size or smaller. Try and pick the size closest to your actual size. Test your joins. If it's not working, test your join. And then, yeah, you can also assign it to calculated fields. So if you want to just type in a URL, type it into a calc, and then assign image role to that calc, and you're good to go. So you don't have to bring in a full data set if you just want one image. Finally, there's some Tableau documentation up on their site that's okay. I've got my post that'll walk you through everything we did today and the other 2 use cases. And then finally, I highly recommend Tableau Tim's YouTube series on image roles. I think it's the most detailed resource I found when I was figuring out how to do this. Yeah. If you want to follow me, these are all of my links. Feel free to take a screenshot, connect with me on LinkedIn, Twitter, wherever you are. Happy to connect. And then my last slide is going to be a QR code if you want to subscribe to Playfair and get these blog posts. So yeah, happy to answer any questions. Feel free to put them in the chat, or, oh, I see there's something in the Q&A. Do you know of any shared repository of these image role helper data sources? I do not, unfortunately. I am happy to send my state flags file to anybody. I would also check data.world. I know a lot of Makeover Monday people are on data.world, so there's at least a little bit of a Tableau community there, and that's a place to post resources. Yeah, but that would be a great tool to build. So if anybody feels like building a tool, this would be a great one. Any other questions?
Don't see any popping up. Thank you, Felicia. Great presentation. And one of the things that I thought interesting, is going to be really nice is you don't have to edit your Tableau repository, which is going to be great when you start working over a number of developers who want to share things. That it eliminates that editing or building that into some sort of a rule and pushing it out to different users. So thank you for the insights and the information. I think that was really great. And now we'll turn things over to Robert Salas, who's going to talk about, Tableau can do that, and also give away some swag, which everyone always likes.
Thanks, Rob. Yep, so I looked at the attendee number, which is 41, took out the leadership team and presenters, and did a random number generation selection. And Patrick Dlugosh, I hope I didn't butcher your name too badly there, selecting you for a $40 Tableau store gift certificate. I've included the link to the Tableau swag store in the chat. And Patrick, if you could please DM me after my presentation, because I need to get your email address, unless you're comfortable throwing it into the chat here. Otherwise, just DM me after my presentation. So again, Patrick Douglas, hope you're listening. Please DM. There you go. All right, I'm going to continue on then and share my screen. So what I'm going to talk about today is actually the beginning of a new series that we are doing. as part of the Wisconsin TUG, which is Tableau can do that, kind of things that are off-label uses of Tableau. In the case today, I'm going to talk about a few ways that we sort of innovated some data delivery to springboard into other reporting platforms using Tableau as the front end because it's really simple and easy to use and intuitive. And it saves the agency that I work for a lot of time and effort in terms of security, management, and so on and so forth. So that's what we're going to talk about. Please come back to our future Wisconsin TUGs where we're going to have, again, this series of 4 presentations over the course of the next year about off-label uses of Tableau. Some that we've talked about have been using Tableau for resumes. I think maybe some of us have seen some of those. And I think our next presenter is actually going to be Lindsay Betzendahl, who's quite the Tableau guru. Not sure what her subject will be. So please come back to our next quarterly meeting. Anyway, a little about me. I'm just going to skim through these bullets. I'm on the Madison and Wisconsin Tableau user group leadership teams. I started my IT career as a business analyst, so definitely connected with users and business requirements more so than the IT side of things, like the hardcore development stuff. Have grown into reporting data visualization over the last 10 years. But finally, last bullet point, my focus has always been on facilitating the connection between the users who either create the data or want to use the data and the data itself. That's always been kind of my interesting focus, is how to facilitate that and streamline it so that they can get to it easier. I have spent most of my time working with the Department of Children and Families as my primary client. A key aspect of this agency and the work that it does is that the majority of their programs, and they have 5 completely disparate programs, they're county administered. And there are 72 counties in Wisconsin. So there's a lot of differentiation between how different county agencies and users amongst different programs do their business, what they have access to. And it's a large workload that is in the thousands splattered all over the state. And they don't all use the same infrastructure, same internet, et cetera. DCF's main pain points, right? They have a half dozen major business programs ranging from child welfare, so we're thinking child abuse and foster care, to the licensing of child care centers, right? Where you take your little 3-year-olds to be babysat. Also, we have child support, so the collection of money from parents. And then the County of Milwaukee itself and the Child Protective Services there is a whole other program unto itself because it's the largest in the state. As I said, there's a very large and dispersed workforce all over the place, different private partner agencies, different state staff scattered across the state, and then the central office staff who actually are here in Madison, Wisconsin. We used to be in an office, now we're all over the place. Because of this, security is one of the biggest problems that we encounter, which is that knowing when to set up users is usually pretty clear. Somebody gets hired, but knowing what they should or should not have access to, what they need to get to for their own specific job roles, especially when they work for a county, is really pretty tricky, and communication is lacking there. And it's a particular problem when people leave, that they are shut down from their main application systems, but somebody might forget to tell us to turn off their access to the Tableau server. And that's not fun for us. Adding to this, not everyone is even on the same network. So the state uses an enterprise firewall network system that all the state agencies can connect to. But out in the counties, they might use, I don't want to say dial-up, but they might use a private ISP like Spectrum or AT&T or Verizon or whomever. And then finally, despite being one large agency, data sharing between the program areas is really, really sensitive. Child support in particular is really restrictive about who can get access to their data because it's financial and it's protected by the IRS, et cetera. Child welfare and child abuse is also very sensitive. So there are pretty big walls between each of the different business groups. If you take all of this and think about how people get to their reports and their dashboards, there's just a lot of different pathways and walls that stand between users and the data. At DCF, the 2 main reporting platforms they have are Business Objects and Web Intelligence, and Tableau. So most users in the counties will have access to Business Objects. They may or may not have access to Tableau, again, because of the difficulties managing users. But they always will have access to their own application system, where they enter the data. And I'll touch on that in a few minutes. So one of the first things we did is figure out how to bring Tableau dashboards to users without them needing to have access to Tableau to log into it and not using a public-facing web page. So we figured out a way to encode the Tableau URL into an iframe set of tags and then put that into a Business Objects Webby report where it renders it. The way that this solves the pain points is allowing these users who already have access to Business Objects in Webby to log into their secure framework. It has a public-facing URL from wherever they are, whether it's an AT&T network or dial-up from home or whatever. Maintenance of these users is easier because we're just maintaining their access to Webby. If they get turned off in Webby, they lose access to the dashboard because that's how they have to get to it. And this negates our inability and the maintenance of setting up user accounts in the Tableau server for non-state staff. We're very limited in terms of who can have an account on the Tableau servers because we have on-prem, and they have to be state staff in the Windows Active Directory of the state. So quite a few limitations in getting to the Tableau content. And when we don't want to throw it out onto a public-facing web page, this is one of our options. The way this works, users log into Webby using their own credentials that they've had. Sometimes they go to their own Webby reports that they need, but they do fundamentally have to have access to the Webby report that contains the iframe code. So the security architecture of business objects is governing whether they can get to this Tableau dashboard, right? And as noted here, these users do not have access directly to the Tableau server. For the dashboard itself, we do have guest access enabled, but we have it embedded inside the Webby document, so people can't really interrogate it or capture it. And then they launch it from within Webby, and this is what they get. And I'm just going to demo that super fast in the actual reporting system. So here I am logging into our business objects Webby environment. I did create a shortcut to the dashboard I want. So I'm logged in as myself. Other users would be logged in themselves. And the Webby report opens. It does take a minute to render here. I don't really know why. It's thinking, it's calling for the dashboard. I swear it works, you just have to be patient. Or it's dumb, there it goes. So when the dashboard opens inside of business objects, right, you can see I'm inside SAP's product. The dashboards are fully interactive and they operate just like they're in a web page. So quick filtering, selections of parameters and options from the filters all work. It's a 100% functional dashboard, but the only way for people to get to it is through their business objects security and the folders that they have access to. So again, this is just a way to deliver data to people where they don't have Tableau access, but we want them to have Tableau product. And so we've created a workaround and a portal to go through business objects for that. Next is using Tableau inside of a secure application. So this is where people do their actual work, and using it to launch Webby reports. Like we're using Tableau basically as a button. We are using preload filtering and dynamically constructing the URLs in order to set the target that we want to open and open it as that user. Pain points that this takes care of. Again, users who don't have access to Tableau, they already have access to their primary system. This is where they do their day-to-day work. This is where they enter the data that they do as part of their job. We don't have to do any maintenance of additional users or credentials in either reporting system of Webby or Tableau. The maintenance of their secure authentication would be the application that they do their work in. So when they quit, they'll get deactivated there almost immediately, and they lose access to both this Tableau launching dashboard and also the reports that they point at. And again, negates our inability to create Tableau users on there. We do slipstream the authentication for Webby in this, and so we're passing in service account credentials, or I don't know what other agencies call those, but they're anonymous credentials that we've set up specifically for the Tableau construct to launch these reports, and they are passed under the hood. This is how this works. Users log into their primary application, again, wherever they go every single day to do their work. We have a little dashboard that shows up on a page in there, and I'll show that to you in just a second. Depending on which icon is clicked, we've created a reference data set that tells the Tableau dashboard, this is the report that they want to open. Here's the unique identifier for it. And then it also knows who the user is using preload filtering from the application to say, this is Joe Blow, ID number 12345. When we open that business objects report, we pass the report ID and we pass the user ID so that they only see their own work and the reports open. So this is what it looks like on the left. It's a very simple list of reports. There's a button that they click and it launches the Webby report on the right. And I'll show you how that works. So this is just within our Tableau server, but we would embed this inside of an application. It would know who the user is. And depending what report they want to look at, they just click the button. It pops open a new window, opens the exact report that I clicked on because we knew what its identifier is. And it's going to run for this particular user, pre-filtering for their ID. Now I chose a user with no information here because it's all sensitive. So they don't normally come back blank, but that is on purpose. So this is a way, again, for people who don't have access to either business objects or to Tableau to get at their report using Tableau as a springboard. That's all this is here for, is to provide a button in this little dashboard. And this is just fed by an Excel worksheet where we have the names, the information, and then the identifier. Really easy to maintain. And when we put this construct out there, it gets a lot of use. People find this really, really convenient because they don't have to log into business objects, navigate through a whole folder tree to find what they want. They just open the report they want. And they can click on multiples, go back to their application and pick a different report. It'll pop open and they get their information, right? So using Tableau as a springboard is our second use case. And then I'm going to completely change direction here and talk about using Tableau to look for non-data. And I'm sure everybody on here is really familiar with the challenges that we have both in data warehousing and in data visualization of reporting on data that's not there, right? It's tricky because you're reporting on something that's not even there. So we're looking for the non-usage of our reports within the agency. Within DCF, we've got over 3,600 reports, and many of them are not used. They're just defunct, they were one-offs, or they've just fallen out of favor. We're trying to reduce the clutter of all those reports, but we need to figure out first which ones are they. And combing through them one by one is just an impossible task. So I use Tableau here to marry a data set of all the reports connected with a data set of usage reports, and I look for the missing data. This is simply done through a dump from our reporting platform of a master list of all the reports. And then I join that with a monthly report that tells us, here are the reports that got used, here are the users that used them, here's how many times they were accessed, et cetera. This right side one is real data. We have this. The left side is the master list. And what we're looking for, again, is the in-between non-usage. This is a quick screenshot of that dashboard. I'll show you in a second. But what it's focused on here is the lack of data. We're looking for zeros. And then I enhanced it to look for low counts as well. So I'll show you that here in a second. So this dashboard is actually two parts. The first is for our business folks to see sort of their heavy hitter reports that they are using. So finance can go in here and see, their top 10 reports of this, that, and the other. The second part, though, is what I want to focus on here, which is looking for reports that have 0 views. So these have not been accessed in the last 6 months. And we can set this to a different time frame. This is a parameter. Because sometimes there are annual reports, they only get used once a year, but they're really, really, really important. So if we want to look for reports that haven't been used in 13 months, we can change that on the fly. So I'm going to stick with 6, because this is our typical analysis of what's being used or not being used. These reports, all of them, are showing up as having 0 counts in the last 6 months, but some of them may have had usage at a different point. So let me see if I can find one. Here we go. So I created a set of calculations and level of detail calculations to look at this and see that it's had 0 views in the last 6 months, but in the last 13, it's had 1 view. So maybe this is important and we don't want to delete it out of hand. We want to look for where these little light bulbs show up and figure out, this is a good example. 0 views in the last 6 months, but 9 in the last 13 months. So apparently it was used a while ago. We would need to dig deeper to figure out whether this one is really a candidate for retirement. In this same dashboard, I created a way to look at, low usage reports. So they may be getting used, but not very much. And so again, looking back 6 months, these reports have been viewed 4 times, 3 times, 2 times, whatever it all is in the last 6 months. Maybe they've been viewed, more prior to that. So this is just an analytical tool we're trying to push to our business customers to self-assess their own reports and figure out what's not being used. And then they can inform us which ones we can get rid of and retire and take off of the server to reduce the amount of clutter. Again, the key thing here being we're looking for zeros. So where there's a 0 means there's actually no usage in the usage data. So we have to infer this from the master list and look and see, yep, there's none in the usage data, so therefore it's a 0. All right, any questions?
Thank you, Robert. I do have one question for you. As you're looking at underutilized report, this is something that we also do regularly. One of the things that we've struggled with is reports with subscriptions. One of the subscriptions that goes out daily, we're looking at bill of lading where delivery date is before shipment date. It's when you send a truck down the road, it really can't arrive before it leaves. But every once in a while that happens. because somebody miskeys something. It's it's August 1st, and they're still thinking July, or it's the first of the year and things like that. And we're using Tableau Online, so we don't have access to Tableau repository. So what we're ended up doing is mining data out of our Exchange server to see what emails were sent out with certain characteristics in them. Is there any other way to grab that stuff from specifically Tableau Online? I think if you have an on-prem service, you can grab it from the repository.
Oh man, not that I can think of offhand with a quick question. I mean, unless you're pulling from a data system, you could use a Tableau connector or Bridge, one of the Bridge connectors. But I don't have a quick and clever answer for you offhand. If you're trying to read from your own data system to Tableau Cloud or Tableau Online. Yeah.
This is Andy here. I would ask your rep potentially about advanced management. That's going to give you more access to some of that metadata. So I would ask the question about advanced management. That might solve for the Tableau Cloud portion of it and trying to get more granular there.
Great, thank you.
So just throwing the question out to all the attendees, do any of you have something similar where you are using Tableau as a springboard over to another application in order to create a shortcut effectively for people from one application to the other? Anybody else out there doing that?
And if you're doing that, you probably need to put something either in the chat or the Q&A session.
Felicia put in there URL actions to other tools driven by data. That's exactly how we're using this. We have like I said, an Excel sheet that sort of provides the IDs of the reports that we're going to. And then when you click on it, that icon, that little report with an arrow icon, that's effectively engaging in a URL action on click. And then it just opens a new window and does its thing. Cool. It looks like a couple people, Brady Sullivan said we're doing that for a customer portal. That's great. And Jen Shepard, they just had a client ask about it. So awesome. Thanks for your attention. Sorry if I blew through that really fast. I was a little worried about time. We do try and finish on time with everyone's lunch hour.
Well, great. And thank you to all of you for joining us today. Please check out on Bevy, easiest way to get to the Wisconsin TUG to see what's coming with future meetings. While you're there, look at both the Madison and Milwaukee TUGs. We are hosting those in person, which is a really great way to get together and network with fellow data users. And seeing nothing else, we will all give you a few minutes back of your lunch hour. And thanks again for attending.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Yep. Thank you all.
Great job, team.